Zambia Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, Zambian diaspora businesses. Do you want to connect with your community back home, right on ZBTR TV? I'm here from Vibeforge AI Studios, Tilfeus, where we're crafting faith-fused media with AI magic. From AI music video production to powerful AI image creation and even music composition. We've got everything you need to make your advertising truly resonate on ZBTR TV. If you're ready to make an impact, let's create something extraordinary together. Your vision, AI powered. Connect with Vibeforge AI Studios today.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. It is Saturday. Believe it or not, we are in August. It's exactly 12 months to Zambia's elections in 2026. And this is a very important and crucial day. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon, Zambia. Good evening, those in the Pacific world in Australia, and good morning, America. Thank you for joining us today. Zambia has had 7 presidents. Interestingly, all the presidents have had some issue of legal issues or falling out with a predecessor or successor, whichever the terminology you want to use. We do not have a good track record of how we treat our former leaders. And those of us that are old enough to reflect, one of the worst things that happened in our country is when Dr. Kaunda was arrested, believe it or not, on Christmas Day. Today, I thought that we should reflect on how this country treats its former leaders. My theme and my discussion today is entitled Historical Amnesia in Zambia, a Culture of Persecuting Former Presidents. I thought we should visit that subject today in light of also what has happened in the passing of Zambia's 6th president, Mr. Edgar Lungu. Believe it or not, to date, his body has not been put to rest or buried. Ladies and gentlemen, I decided to reflect and bring a gentleman who is able to reflect, relate, and guide us through these issues because, and I was just telling him that the uniqueness of his positioning and standing in the Zambian community and political sphere. Today, I am greatly honored to have my big brother, Bishop Dr. Trevor Mwamba, who has served in the Anglican Church at various levels, and most recently, before he retired, as Bishop of Botswana for more than or close to 20 years. Is that right, Bishop Mwamba?
I was in Botswana for about 20 years,
yes.
And I was Bishop of Botswana for 8 of those years. But the other years, I worked in the church as Vicar General of the Diocese of Botswana and Secretary General for our what we call the Church of the Province of Central Africa, which is Botswana, Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. So I worked directly with all the bishops as a CEO, so to speak.
Okay, excellent. I mean, huge responsibility. And when I look at your track record in the church and the other work that you have done, I said to myself, this was basically positioning him for leadership of a political party.
Amazing. God works in mysterious ways indeed.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Bishop, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us.
My brother Nathan, it's a great honor to be with you. Good morning, America, and is it evening the Pacific? And good afternoon, Zambia.
Yeah, it's an interesting world. It's an interesting world. Let's begin with what we may call a current prevailing situation in the country, and I'm going to approach it this way. My first question: you and the ECL were in the same intake at UNZA in the School of Law. We know that he came through Mukuba Secondary School. This is the way we got, for those who do not know your track record, your background, your history. What was your path of life leading up to UNZA?
Thank you very much, Nathan. In fact, before I answer that question, as I was preparing for our interview, and I came across a very inspiring prayer, which, as you mentioned, this is August, the beginning of August, and 12 months from today, we'll have the elections. And but this prayer, it's a Pope intentional prayers for August. And it's very fitting in context of our discussion. And I thought as we begin, I could, with your permission, pray this prayer for ourselves, because basically the prayer calls upon all of us to look upon each other in a spirit of mutual coexistence and encouraging societies as well to seek dialogue and fraternity, in the context of confrontational situations. And so it's about peace. It's about being together in love. And this is the prayer.
Go ahead, Bishop.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, you are the creator of all people, the one who shaped us in your image, regardless of race, language, or culture. We thank you for the beauty of our diversity and the richness of every community. Lord, in a world divided by fear, pride, and misunderstanding, we come to you, asking for healing. Teach us to live as true brothers and sisters, to listen with open hearts, to speak with compassion, and to build bridges where wars have been raised. Help us reject the temptation to hate, to exclude, or to seek confrontation based on our differences. Where there is political, ethnic, religious, or ideological division, pour out your spirit of peace and reconciliation. Inspire leaders with wisdom to govern justly. Comfort those wounded by injustice and violence, and guide every one of us to be instruments of unity, always working for a world that reflects your love. We offer this prayer through the intercession of Mary, Queen of Peace, and in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, who calls all people to be one family under God. Amen.
Amen.
So this prayer, and it's so moving, so touching, and so apt. Now, your question in regard to my classmate, Edgar Lungu. Yes, and it's, as you mentioned, he went to Mukuba Secondary School, and we met at UNZA. Now, in my case, I studied both in Zambia and outside. We started off in Zambia. Then my father was a diplomat, and we ended up in Washington, D.C. As you know, some of my brothers, we interviewed Jay once upon a time on his book. Then we came back to Zambia, and I went to Kabulonga Secondary School, where I finished off my secondary schooling. And in those days, we had to do national service. So I was one of those early recruits and so on. And
I remember that.
You did it as well, eh?
No, I didn't. I was in the intake. I was in the intake just when they stopped it.
Then you are a young man. You are a young man. So I finished at Katete, and in those days, if you were selected to go to university or college, and they shortened, you had to do the military training, which was compulsory. But if you didn't get in, then you went on and did the next phase, which was agricultural and all that. But so I then went to UNZA in '77, and that's where I met Edgar. And we were in the same law class. And it was a fascinating class. And I should highlight, quite frankly, that the class of '81, as somebody said, it had Zambia's best minds at the time, and some say, and since then. Okay. And just to give you a glimpse, and our listeners and people watching, in this class, there was Melvin Imbao, who became a very renowned constitutional lawyer and professor in South Africa. And there was Lady Justice Hilda Chibomba, who became the president of the Constitutional Court of Zambia.
Wow.
And then the present president of the Constitutional Court of Zambia, Margaret Munalula, she was also in our class, and now she is, of course, the president of the Constitutional Court.
Oh, wow.
Then there was also Justin Chinyanta, who became a very eminent investment banker. First, he became the vice president of Citibank, as well as HSBC, before forming his own banking group. And then there was Laura Harrison, and she became the permanent secretary for information, Minister of Information and Broadcasting. And she's also the one who formed the Women's Lobby Group.
Oh, wow.
Then there was Winter Kavimba, who, of course, became the Secretary General of the Patriotic Front, at one time Minister of Justice and other portfolios. And he is now the president of the Economic Front Party. And of course, as where we started, Edgar Lungu, who became our sixth president of Zambia. So these are just a few of the many other distinguished classmates who were in this class of '81. And that's how it was. I think somebody ought to do a PhD on our class.
A research on your class. What are your recollections of the times that you interacted with him? What are your recollections?
Very much so. You know, Edgar was an interesting fellow in context of what he ultimately became, the president of Zambia.
Yes.
But during our time, in our class, he was one of the most quietest people you can ever come across. He would sit in the back of the class, and Edgar hardly said anything. And, one of my classmates once put his hand to his heart. He said, for the life of me, the time we were in that law class, I never heard Edgar say a single word. But he did ask. Now and then he would volunteer. But he was basically very unassuming, very humble, just there. He didn't raise the room temperature at all. That he was just there. He was an amicable fellow, jovial. He loved to party. He was a lovely man. And so that was him. Very quiet, but very distinguished in the sense of just being an unassuming and humble person. That's the recollection I have of Edgar in our class. Yes. So in fact, as I mentioned once in a different interview, I said, if at the time we had to say, okay, who among us in this class would be president of Zambia, I can guarantee you none would have said Edgar Lungu. That's how he was.
Okay.
But God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah, interesting. I just thought we'd do a reflection on that, considering what the country is going through and his family and all those that are concerned and everything else. So you went to UNZA to study law. In the process, you graduated, and you had an interesting turnaround in your life. And you had a, what shall we call it, a vocational or career change. What prompted the switch from a lawyer to pastoral to the priesthood? And when I ask this question, I'm always interested to know how the family, particularly your parents, responded to that.
It's a very profound and beautiful question, Nathan. You're absolutely right. I mean, I went to UNZA not thinking myself that I would go into the church. But we were brought up, my parents were Anglicans, and we worshipped, and we were brought up as children and baptized and confirmed as Anglicans, and they would take us all to church. And so there was a depth of our spiritual upbringing, which was very rooted. But that was not my intention. So at UNZA, when I was finishing my law studies, I felt drawn to the church. It was an inkling, an impulse, a push, something I couldn't resist. And I couldn't work it out. But I remember once going to my room at UNZA and just getting on my knees and saying to God, Lord, this push, I don't feel like this is where I want to go. I was studying law. I want to become a lawyer. I thought perhaps later on go into diplomacy. My family, my father and relatives were in that, and also public service. But I was drawn to the church. So I prayed this prayer. I said, Lord, if this is what you want for me, then I would do it. And I felt such peace. I mean, really such. And I realized that was a path. So when I finished at UNZA, I graduated, I worked briefly, Ministry of Legal Affairs, I think it was called in those days, and then went to Oxford to study theology and train for the priesthood. And it was there actually that I came across an interesting book by Francis Thompson. It's a poem, and it's called The Hound of Heaven. And it depicts us human beings as sinners, of course, running away from God. And God is like a dog, a hound, chasing you until you cannot run, and then you give up. And that's what happened. I found that very interesting. But here's the thing. So I trained and I was ordained. When I came back home, and my mom at the time worked at UTH, I went to see at her office, and I sat opposite her, and I was in my, just as I'm dressed, clerical attire. And she looked at me and she said to me, oh, my son, I am so happy that you are a priest. Because then she told me the story. She said, you see, before you were born, she had problems giving birth. You know, she had a miscarriage and that. And so she thought she would never have children. So she said, she made a bargain with God. She said, Lord, if you give me a child, and if he's a boy, I'll give him back to you. Basically, she said to me, that's what happened. And God has answered my prayer. And then she said this. And she said, you know, I am so happy now that I can now die a happy woman. And in less than a year, sadly, Nathan, my mother died in a car accident. But God had answered my prayer. That is how the change came about. And my mom growing up never pushed me, never insinuated. And that's what happened. But so she was very happy. My father was very happy.
She prayed. She just prayed.
She had prayed. God had answered our prayer. And my father was a very liberal person. So they were all very happy that they have allowed us. They allowed us as children to do what we wanted to do. Then they gave us the support. So there was always that support. Yes. So they were very happy when I became a priest and then later a bishop. And that's how my life changed.
Wow, amazing, interesting. Yeah, I'm always interested to learn those dynamics of transitions of life because it's important to talk about it because people can learn from those things, especially those that are watching. To everybody watching, my conversation today is about this culture we have in our country, Bishop Mwamba, of persecuting former leaders. Why do changes in government in Zambia often lead to legal action against former leaders? Why?
You know, there's a history, as we're aware. In 1991, there was a change of government.
Yes.
And the UNIP, which had been in power for 27 years, lost to MMD, and President Chiluba took over. One would have assumed in that context, and of course, the elections were very peaceful.
Yes.
President Kaunda magnanimously accepted defeat and stepped aside. And one would have thought that, peaceful change and transition, the new government coming in would have tapped on the experience and the wisdom of, President Kaunda and those who had been in power before. But somehow, as we all know, that was not the case. A spirit of vindictiveness, that's the only way that one can put it, came upon the leadership. And in this case, we're looking at President Chiluba, who ended up imprisoning his former president, President Kaunda, putting him in prison. And the charges were never even stated.
Because that was the other question I was going to ask you. In retrospect, yes. Bishop Mwamba, when I look back, I said to myself, what were the charges?
Yes. And there were no charges. And in fact, you may recall, whilst he was in prison, President Kaunda went on strike.
Yes.
Hunger strike. And he said, why have you put me here? There were no charges at all. Nothing ever was brought up as the reason for him being put in prison. But then there's the other dimension, of course, about him being put in prison. And that is, and these were not the charges why he was put there, but there was, you remember, the accusation that he had stolen billions of dollars. In fact,
I call it the greatest deception.
That is so true.
The greatest deception. Everybody watching, some of you may be young, you may not remember this. We were taught Kaunda and his family had amassed wealth at the expense of the nation. Let's speak to that, Bishop Mwamba. And what did the investigation yield?
My brother, zilch. Zero. Nothing. And here's the thing, the greatest deception, that is an appropriate way to describe it. $4 billion US apparently had been siphoned and eaten by the Kaundas. And guess what? They got Scotland Yard to come and investigate and trace this 4 billion. And Scotland Yard came. And Scotland Yard went around the world looking for this $4 billion US dollars. And Scotland Yard found nothing. In fact, they reported to President Kaunda even before they went to report, give the official, said, no, we found nothing. There's nothing. And guess what? The only thing President Kaunda had, and this is after 27 years in power, 27, he only had $9,000 US in his bank account. Nothing. $9,000 US. And, he went in and came out a poor man. And as many of our leaders of the time...
Most of the UNIP leaders...
They were paupers, if I may use that expression. They were paupers. I mean, they didn't go into office, public. They were there to serve. They didn't go poor and come out rich. No, they went in poor and came out poor because their focus was always to serve the Zambian nation. So that is what happened. So nothing was found. Nothing was found, And I am reminded, there is a saying which was said by a Scottish novelist and poet. His name is Walter Scott. Walter Scott says, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive." And basically what it means is that when we act dishonestly, we set off a chain reaction of problems that will eventually absorb us. And that is what President Chiluba started. And now the executive and, must be aware of this. This problem that was started then set off a chain reaction.
And you see, go ahead.
They never apologized when Scotland Yard. They continue to perpetuate the same lies, but the truth stood there that no, this is not correct. But they continued. It's a terrible spirit, vindictive.
It is. Vindictive spirit. Everybody watching, the reason I decided we have this conversation, like I've said, it's 12 months from now, we're going to be having elections in Zambia. Please learn to evaluate things. There should be no more, because you see, people are just engrossed with HH. There are greater deceptions that have been said to this nation that you have never. Bishop, we profess to be a Christian nation. Therefore, implies that we believe God is involved in the affairs of our nation. I strongly believe that if FTJ didn't incarcerate KK, the vindictive spirit in our politics today would have ended with his presidency. What are your views on that statement?
Nathan, you could not put it more clearly and directly. I totally agree with you. Totally agree. And it's a spirit of, lies, deception. And, in the Bible, we're a Christian nation. They say the devil is a liar. And unfortunately, one is sometimes tempted. They said, oh dear, I think some of these people are under some influence of some negative spirit. But you're absolutely right. How do you stop this? You see, when President Chiluba did what he did, putting President Kaunda in prison and doing what he was doing. In fact, when he went into prison, President Nyerere came to Zambia.
Yes.
And he went to see President Chiluba and said, what have you done? Because you see, he said to him, what you have done will create a precedence.
Yes.
And others will follow in those footsteps of yours. You should not have done this. Now, of course, President Kaunda was this iconic leader, Nyerere, iconic leader, the Mandelas, all. So he went to see President Kaunda, Mokobeke, or Matsima, because that's where he was detained at the time. And he was released after that. Because
after Nyerere's visit.
Absolutely, because there was a lot of international pressure on President Chiluba. So he was released from prison, but he was kept under house arrest.
House arrest, yeah.
That's correct. But you're absolutely right. It's to say that it's set about this chain reaction. And in a way, you are in the US and you're close to Atlanta, Georgia there. And my mind goes back to and remembering what Martin Luther King said, once. He said something to the effect that darkness cannot drive out darkness.
No.
Only light can do that. And then he said, hate cannot drive out hate.
No.
Only love can do that. So what am I saying? I'm saying, you see, this vindictive spirit, in order for it to be cut, we must move away from this darkness, from this hate, to love. It's a spirit of love that we need in our leaders, and that President Kaunda had that. But so there we are.
And in light of what we are discussing, Bishop Mwamba, you can see that this has perpetuated, just like another thing that the FTJ's MMD government did, which has perpetuated. They embarked on constitutional reforms which were intended to prohibit KK from standing for the presidency again, okay? Because our nation's numerous constitutional changes are not meant for a development or to enhance our democracy. These are activities that tend to sort of consolidate power of the ruling party. And we are seeing it even a few months ago. What do they, Bill 7, Bill 13, whatever it is called? Oh my goodness.
I hear you.
What would you attribute this repetitive failure to process to change the constitution. Can't our leaders look back and say, if let's do better? I mean, here's one thing, Bishop, what amazes me. Our country, with a meager budget, you are trying to increase the number of constituencies of parliamentarians. But listen to me, Zambians. Here's one thing that every president has failed to do. The Public Order Act is still there. And we don't ask those questions. Come on, people, everybody watching. Why don't we put pressure on our governments, on our presidents? Bishop, the public order still stands.
You know, the public order, again, we must know its history. That this public order goes back to the colonial context.
As far back as that.
Exactly. And the public order was simply to contain and put Africans in place. And, you know, it was a colonial enterprise that existed. And it was not in favor of the Africans. They had the policy of divide and rule. So the public order was simply to keep the natives in their place. So after independence, that should have been removed. And there is no argument in terms of that should be removed. And any decent president coming in power with concern of his people, Zambians, that's the first thing that should go. It's anti-democratic, you know. It's very undemocratic. So anyway, so it comes and it has been perpetuated. Yes. And the reason why, and this comes back to constitutional changes, attempts at this, again, if you look at the very essence and the spirit of all these attempts, it is, of course, yes, to preserve the power of a few elite, either an individual or a party. When you alluded to President Chiluba in 1996, brought about the constitutional change by introducing what we call the parentage clause.
Exactly.
Which simply stated that if your parents were not born in Zambia, you could not qualify to be president of Zambia. And yet President Kaunda was born in Zambia. His parents, yes, came from Malawi. He had been president for 27 years. So how then does he now, how can he be disqualified?
Does not qualify.
And then later on, of course, there was that bit where he was declared stateless. So you wonder what is happening. What is happening is that in the context, I mean, President Chiluba is just an excellent example. And the history and students of politics ought to study this carefully. He was afraid. He was afraid of KK. He was insecure. He wanted to preserve power. And people around him, and this is always happens, there are those praise singers.
Yes.
Who, whether in parliament or outside, who are there to assist him achieve a very undemocratic, measures and steps. So that's what happened. So subsequent to that, you're absolutely right in terms of the attempted constitutional changes. It had the theme behind it all is that people who bring this up are afraid. They're afraid of losing power. They want to preserve this power. And so they want to use the constitution as a means of preserving themselves. In my view, it's what you may call, you talk about a military coup. Yeah, military coup is obvious. The army comes in, boom, you're out. This is what you might call a democratic coup, using parliament. It's a power grab. But you're trying to use legitimate means of parliament to rob the Zambian people of their rights and of their entitlements. So it's only when you have a crop of leaders or leadership that is there for the people. They will not be concerned about preserving power. No, they, in fact, an approach, in my view, would be you begin to delimit powers of the presidency and other institutions which rob the Zambian people of their power, and you give the power to the people. So it will come. I believe it will come. And it's important we're discussing these things.
Yeah, so it's very important that we talk to these things, because I realize that most of our young people are looking at things in the present. They don't have the privilege that you and I have of things that have happened in the past.
Correct.
And we look at the third term attempt as well. That was a disaster. Yeah.
Oh, well, indeed. I mean, That is it. I mean, again, we're talking President Chiluba. He's an excellent man for, his historic and political studies of how not to. So President Chiluba is there, 2 terms. But then he realizes that, as he himself put it, and I'm quoting, power is sweet. And
I remember that speech. I didn't know that this chair is so sweet.
That is it, so sweet. So now he then goes, he says, okay, I'll go for a 3rd term. That, of course, is hiding behind, but the man wants to go for a 3rd term. But and then the Zambians, as they are very wise, our people are very wise, very shrewd, and very understanding, they said, no way. So that campaign failed.
Yes.
And hence, of course, in context of where we find ourselves now with attempts at a constitutional amendment with elections only a year ago, that's Bill 7.
Yes.
The Constitutional Court has ruled that, look, certain provisions in the constitutions were breached. And of course, the very important point here is about consulting the Zambian people themselves.
Exactly.
There's a provision for consulting the Zambian people, and we don't have time to consult, the election. So the logical thing is that, look, just withdraw, remove this, wait until 2026, and this
after elections, then you can resume the process.
That is it. That is it. So
is that going to be? Is the government going to oblige to that?
Yes. I mean, the government are servants of the people. The people of Zambia.
Not in Zambia.
Well, they are. They were great leaders in the past who the Zambian people decided otherwise. Whether you're looking at UNIP and context of MMD going for a 3rd term, things have been built Bill 10.
Yes. Yes.
And all this. So what is Bill 7? There will be that withdrawal because it has been withdrawn. The Constitutional Court has ruled like that. And so we have to go back and allow the Zambian people to speak. They're the masters and they have spoken. How have they spoken? First, you have had the mother bodies, so the church mother bodies, all saying no. You have had civil society all saying no. You have had the opposition, so-called opposition parties, all saying no.
No.
You have had the Law Association of Zambia all saying no.
No.
So, I mean, and who isn't that the whole, isn't it the nation speaking? And so when no, it's a red light, it means stop. You can't go beyond this. And the wise will listen to that no.
That's true. That's true. Okay, we're going to take a break here. Before we go, Dr. Mukupa says sometimes prosecutions are not just about justice, they're about neutralizing political rivals. Wow. Isn't she on target, Bishop?
Very much so. No, my comment is yes, I totally agree. I totally agree.
Neutralizing political rivals. Yeah, and that's basically what has been going on here. Okay, let's take a break and we'll continue our conversation with Bishop Mwamba.
Hey Zambia, are you ready to kickstart your Saturdays with insightful conversations, unmissable guests, and all the trending topics you need to know? Then you have to tune into the ZBTR TV show. It's an electrifying show every single Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. From current affairs to lifestyle, entertainment, and everything in between, we're your go-to source for vibrant discussions that matter to you. Mark your calendars. Every Saturday, 9 a.m. CST, join the ZBTR TVS show live stream and be part of something amazing. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Most of our viewers are not subscribed, and we really want you to be part of our growing community. Also, give us a follow on our social media platforms to stay updated throughout the week.
Welcome back. My guest today is Bishop Dr. Trevor Mwamba. We're talking about historical amnesia in Zambia, a culture of persecuting former presidents. Now, like that commercial said there, most of you watch this have not subscribed to our YouTube channel or follow us on Facebook. That's why you miss the program when it comes live, because it will notify you that we are live. That way you do not miss the conversation. All right, Bishop Mwamba is back, and we are continuing our conversation on the subject of a culture of persecuting former leaders, vindictive politics in Zambia. Okay, Bishop, how independent are Zambia's investigative and judicial institutions in handling such high-profile cases? How independent are they?
One wishes for the best and hopes that they ought to be independent. Ideally, all institutions ought to be independent.
Yes.
However, practice reveals that, on the whole, our so-called independent institutions, especially those tasked with investigating, are compromised. They are compromised, and the people within are fearful of executing their roles, which have been given to them by the mandates of the particular bodies that they are part of, because the system as it tends now has been compromised. You have the independence of the judiciary, ideally. You have the legislature, parliament. You have the executive. And if you go on to the principles of the separation of powers, those ought to operate independent of influence from any one of the others. But that has not been the case. Because if you have then, say, the executive, you have the presidency in this, and talk about the presidency as an institution, who appoints judges. Some of those judges, although they ought to be independent, feel obliged,
yes,
to perform their duties as an obligation and in favor of the appointing power. This should not be the case. There are people with principles in these institutions who do their job, but they are few. I think the majority are compromised, and we need to look into this going forward.
If they won't get fired when they do their job.
Correct.
That's exactly. My next question is also based on what my friend here is saying, Pastor Campbell. He says, but how do we hold political leaders accountable for corruption post-office? My question was going to be, why do you think corruption cases tend to fail in Zambian courts, which are primarily used as weapons against political components? There have been a lot of cases that have been started against former political leaders, and they just fell flat in the face, which is a perfect example. The current government, UPND, started at a very high, with so many people in court, but a lot of them, a few people have been arrested, and I mean, former first lady, the property, that block of flats assets was given. Why do these things fail flat in court? Everybody watching, I told Bishop that I'm glad that I'm having him as a guest, because he's here, he's got a legal background, he's clergy, and he's a political party leader, so he can speak. Your legal inclination, why do these things fall flat in court, Bishop?
As I say, there's this overarching power that has diluted what is ideally ought to be an independent judiciary.
Yes.
Ideally ought to be an independent legislature. And it's diluted because the power of the presidency is overwhelming. And these are matters that need to be addressed. going forward in terms of constitutional amendments. For example, and this is an answer to why, in terms of corruption, why many cases fail.
Yes.
It is because the judges, and I would say many, not all, are corrupt. They will be told what to do. But that is because, as I alluded to, they're appointing a power as that power to appoint a judge. What should happen? This is what should happen in terms of the judicial service or judiciary, is that going forward, judges should not be appointed by the president. And this has always been the case.
Yeah.
How should they be appointed?
Maybe let's speak to that. How should judges be appointed? How should we choose our judges in Zambia?
Yeah, because it's addressing the corruption here. Judges in Zambia, see, we have a lot of talented people. I mean, judges in and outside Zambia. Now, judges should be appointed on the basis of meritocracy, merit. Secondly, judges should be appointed by, the Judicial Service Commission. You have a group of experts, and on the basis of merit, and it should be transparent. Take the South African model, for example, where it should be publicized. Whoever wants to apply for a position as a judge, toss in your CV, toss in your credentials, and then you will be cross-examined, and the public can take part. You can see them being interviewed. They will show what judgments they have passed in the background. So in the end, those who are shortlisted by the Judicial Service Commission, appointing agents, will then decide that, you are the best, because on the basis of merit. And then that name, then they will appoint so-and-so candidate, and that name would be given to the president. And the job of the president in this instance, because he's not the appointing authority here, is just to read the name of the successful candidate. And that would ensure, you see, that judiciary is enforced. It is strengthened, if we start with that. If we look at the legislature, say parliament, and in the context of the executive, where cabinet ministers, they are appointed from parliament, that should not be the case. Because if you're a member of parliament and then you're a member of the executive, already there's conflict of interest. I mean,
that's right.
You are serving two masters. So what should be happening is that members of parliament should just be members of parliament, full stop. But where should the cabinet ministers come from? Where then again, with the amendment to the constitution, it should be that cabinet ministers should be appointed from the 20 million plus Zambians. You go for the best, and you pick the very best, and again, based on merit, so that cabinet ministers are not members of parliament, but they would be liable to be called by parliament and cross-examined. So that would strengthen the separation of powers, you see. And that would also curtail on the corruption, because then there's a security of tenure when you are as a judge, because you won't be sacked by the president, and so you do your job. So, but things are it's diluted, and hence the corruption that we are facing, and the breakdown in institutions because of this.
Would you like to speak to Campbell's point? How do we hold political leaders accountable for corruption post-office?
Very, very, very simple. Any politician or any public service officer, you're a servant of the state, you're a servant of the people. If you breach, your conditions of service, that's why the laws are there. These people should be taken to court and tried and sentenced if they are found guilty. That's how it should be enforced. But that can only be if the courts are independent, if the institutions investigating are independent. And in fact, one of my suggestions in a way is that, we're part of the Commonwealth. nations. And there is this arrangement protocols. I was in Botswana. The judges who sat on the Botswana Supreme Court, for example, came from around the Commonwealth. They were not somewhere in Botswana. One or two of the judges, the rest were from England. I remember from Nigeria. I remember from Ghana. So what that does is, in fact, it reinforces, in fact, the impartiality of the courts.
That's interesting.
Going forward, this is some things we need to be thinking about. If we have to address this corruption and so on, we should just set up tribunals. Whichever government comes in, or a government of national unity, you set up tribunals and you recruit judges, you recruit lawyers from outside Zambia, Commonwealth, the common law we follow, and you set up this special tribe who will do the investigations, totally impartial, and then people will be tried accordingly and sentences meted out. So people should be held accountable in such a manner.
Yeah, I think it's necessary, because it's very frustrating when you have people being dragged into the public arena. Hey, he's corrupt, he stole, and then the case just ends up falling flat. And what legal constitutional reforms could help balance accountability with the protection of former leaders' rights?
Protection. Look, again, we were talking about here. We're looking at the situation because things have gone down the drain. Anyone who goes into public service, but we're looking at possibilities, and we have to guard against that. Anybody who goes into public service, you are thinking that such an individual or person is there to serve, is there to render their gifts, God-given gifts, their experience, their abilities for the good of the country. They will not be there to steal. They will not be there to abuse the system. They're there to improve. And so if a system is working, there'll be very, very few cases of people being held liable. But if you have rogues going into politics because it's a fast track to making money, it's a fast track to whatever you want to achieve, and the institutions are not working, and then when they leave, they get away with it, I mean, then we've lost the plot. We need to get back to our moral foundation. And but anybody who breaks the law, or I'm saying with strong institutions, you'll be able to prosecute and bring people to boot.
And you see, what we have witnessed in recent months in light of ECL's death is this gap or void of having no voice of reason in Zambia. And you could hear a lot of people. Now, this is where your role as clergy, your office as clergy comes in. There was this outcry to say the Nevers Mumbas shouldn't have gone into politics. The Mwambas shouldn't have gone into politics. Because the bishop, it looks like there's no voice of reason in the country. Apparently, it's believed most of the clergy have been compromised and have accepted bribes from sitting presidents. You notice that, I mean, before, every time we have a new president, a certain clique of members of the clergy, draw a line with him. We have a president, a certain clique of the clergy align with him. What has happened to that?
Yes, it's about principles, integrity. Yes and no. Yes, in the sense, voice of reason, we do, and I think in terms of the churches, the mother bodies on the whole, I think specifically here I would put stress on the Roman Catholic Church.
Yes,
you have very learned priests and people who are experts. They analyze our society, our cultures, and the cost of living, and they're very clever. That's a voice of reason. But the question is, is that voice of reason being heard? Is it being heard? Because people don't want to listen to the voice of reason. So it's not to say it's not there, it is there. And there was recently, which was rather unfortunate, really, a letter, a classified letter, written in December of 2021, purportedly coming from the president to the Director General of our Zambia Security Intelligence Services, where it basically says, instructing that they should contain the voice, the influence of the Roman Catholic Church and other faith-based organizations. So what does that mean? And who is containing this and why? So these are things which are very serious. And but it's just to say that the voice of reason are there. We must listen to it. But our people don't want to listen to reason. They want to listen to lies. And then when you look at our political evolution in Zambia, the churches have played a very prominent role in the democratic process. I mean, there was a time, you may recall, President Kaunda, towards the end of the one-party state, and the discussions and the MMD discussions, which were facilitated by the then Bishop of Lusaka at the Cathedral of the Holy Cross. So those are positive measures that the churches have played. And we do, and I acknowledge, have certain self-proclaimed bishops who wake up one evening and they have their churches, and those are easily compromised. And then those are used as examples of, the church, when they in fact are not really the church. It's a one man, one woman, whatever. But because Zambia is a Christian nation, they are given some respect. But these are not really focused on integrity and truth. These are false prophets. But coming back to the question, the voice of reason is there, and the churches must be heard and must be followed, those who speak with integrity and truth and in a prophetic manner. They are there to provide the light and the salt in our nation.
Since we're talking about this before we transition to a prevailing situation in our country today, there's a comment here. It says, all politicians, even church leaders, are concerned with acquiring more power. How do political leaders consult an electorate that can be bought with a bag of cornmeal?
Yeah, very good question. You see, all politicians, even church leaders, are concerned with acquiring more power. Church leaders should not be concerned with acquiring more power. We follow a Lord who humbled himself and took upon himself the form of a servant. A true leader is a servant. He's not interested in power. He's interested in serving. So all these are the wrong characters, and we should not be going for them. Go for the humble. Go for those who serve. Jesus, before he was crucified, he washed the feet of his disciples. And he said, look, you call me Lord, Lord, but what am I doing? I'm washing your feet. And he who wants to be a leader, I'm paraphrasing, must be a servant. And therefore, this is about service. So power only the devil wants power, quite frankly. But the power of God is a power of love. And the power of love is a power of service, of compassion, of mercy, of uplifting others, and not putting yourself forward. And so these are things which we need to understand. We have lost our moral compass, and that is why all this is happening. We need to get back to values that build Zambia. Our founders were servants of the people. They were political leaders who were concerned about the Zambian people, not themselves. And this is what we've forgotten. As you said, the history. We need to know our history.
Yes, we need to. Yeah. Because what I've noticed is most of the people making noise on social media don't have a concept of our political history. Blank, bankrupt. They don't have a clue. That's why we're talking about this. Dr. Kayingu says, I believe judges should be selected through a transparent process that includes publicly advertising available vacancies to all qualified Zambians, therefore ensuring widespread awareness and equal opportunity for qualified candidates. Yeah, just
absolutely exactly what we said. In fact, I would even push it further that yes, we first look at qualified Zambians and you advertise widely, but you also advertise it broadly in terms of the Commonwealth, so that it is pollinated with, as I mentioned, the example of Botswana, with the best of the best.
That's true. We are talking about political amnesia. I want us to zero into something here and address, because you see, people tend to demonize other people because, like you said, they don't know their history. Let's watch this. Let's watch this.
Love God, your creator, all your heart, all your mind, all your soul. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, the reason I've reminded that is that President Lungu, rest his soul, he's the one who made the decision and asked the family to say, we want to put KK at Embassy Park. It was him. I tried to talk to this minister, this one, that one, to say, look, that's not what the old man wanted. But the president insisted that that's what he wanted to happen. Then it'll become a tradition that presidents would be put at Embassy Park.
Okay. For those who may not know, that's Kaweche Kaunda, late Dr. Kaunda's son. That is self-explanatory. There is this culture that this country has adopted, Bishop Mwamba. It didn't start with what is happening now concerning ECL. People need to listen to this carefully. You recall Bishop Mwanawasa said he wanted to be buried at his farm. That was not respected. Dr. Kaunda said he wanted to be buried next to his wife. That was not respected. Let's draw some parallels and similarities and lessons from the Kaunda family incident when KK died. What the nation is experiencing currently with ECL's family. What are the lessons? I want you to speak to this as clergy and as a lawyer, because the government seems to be exerting its power on these families. Kaunda said this, Mwanawasa said this, and of course ECL also said what he said. How should we proceed with this, Bishop Mwamba?
Let me give a general outline or base, a way I look at this as a priest of 40 years, by the way. I was this past week, where are we? Today is Saturday, on Monday, the 28th of July. I was ordained a priest in 1985. So 40 years ago this week, I've been a priest
That's a long
in the
time.
Church of God. Thank you very much. And then of these 40 years, 20 years as a bishop. 20 years as a bishop. Now, what you've just played and then also alluded to context of President Levi Mwanawasa and President Kaunda here, and then Edgar. Here's the principle. The principle is very simple. The family, and I repeat, the family comes first. The wishes of a family are paramount over anything else. And why do I say that? I mean, it's like when I've done weddings.
Yes.
When people are getting married, you listen to the wedding preparations. It's a family who are up front, no external forces. The other important ritual or passage in life is, of course, death. When a death occurs, it's a family who are affected first and foremost. So the views of the family, in my view, are paramount. Now, what happened, we're starting with President Levi Mwanawasa. It was very clear indeed of how he wanted and to be buried and where he wanted to be buried. But that particular decision taken at the instigation of the state at the time was in consultation with his family and the then First Lady, former First Lady, Maureen Mwanawasa, and the family agreed to him being buried where he was buried. It's the family and the state. If they had insisted that, no, we don't want that, they could have had their way. That's one. In the case of the Kaunda, the President Kaunda clearly, on many occasions, and I know people who were privy to this, he said that he did not want to be buried at Embassy Park. He wanted to be buried where his wife is buried at their home at a state lodge. Now, when that happened, of course, as Kaweche states, President Lungu asked that he should be buried there. There was an agreement. The family said, okay, they will do that. However, what is also pertaining is that it was just for a moment in time that he would be buried. He would be removed and be buried where he always wanted to be.
Oh, really?
Yes, and that is the decision which was agreed upon and will be, done at appropriate time according to the family when the family feels so. So all I'm saying that in both these instances, the position of the family is paramount. It cannot be overridden. But there was an agreement. And in fact, what happened, people say, well, there is a law where the judgment, it was really the judgment, is that Kaweche, when his father, before he was interred, he brought out an urgent application to try and, abide by his father's wish.
Yes.
And that judgment was only given after he had been buried. So it was too late.
What was the judgment, if I may remind everybody watching?
Well, the judgment was simply that the judge, and this is the judge now hearing this urgent application, he said, well, President Kaunda was this great persona. He was a president and therefore a property of the state. And he went beyond family and therefore belonged to the nation. And I'm paraphrasing. And so therefore, that was the ruling. Now, already he had been buried by the time that judgment came. So Kaweche decided not to, take that for judicial review. He left it because there is going to be this second phase.
Yes.
And so that is why. So that in itself is not law. Yeah, it's not.
No, it's not. Bishop, can you please speak to this thing? It has come up so many times. Property of the state. Property of the state. Property of the state.
Who is a property of the state? No one is a property of the state. You're a property of your family, and you may be a president for the time being as you are. You're an institution. You're an institution. Yes. But when you leave that institution, you go back to your family.
Private,
private, yes. So this is the point. And then there are those who want to emphasize and say, no one is a property of the state. And even that judgment, as I say, it's not law. It has been challenged because that's what will happen. President Kaunda will be buried next to his wife one day. So now coming back to the issue at hand, in terms of the Lungu family, the family comes first.
Yes.
Their wish has to be respected. Now, of course, when you die, President Levi Mwanawasa, in fact, he died in office. He was a president.
Yes, he was.
President Kaunda was, of course, had left office and so, but he was given the honor and the benefit of, as a former head of state, to have a state funeral. So all it means is that the state carries the bill, and they do the necessary protocols, commiserate with his status. And that also would depend whether the family wants that. It's not it just doesn't happen that way. They've been in cases, other places, for example, in South Africa, I think it was P.W. Botha.
Yes.
When he died, he said he didn't want a state funeral. And the state acceded to that. He didn't have a state funeral, so they allowed that. And then there are those other places where people have been buried. Mandela is buried in his home village, and so on. So no, the state is there to assist, to facilitate, but family always comes first, and one must listen to the views of the family.
I don't know how we are going to. Yeah, I don't know how we are going to get over that moving forward, because I don't know, Bishop. I don't see it happening, because it seems
moving forward. I mean, situations like this, when they arise, it also depends who's making the judgments, who's making the call.
Yeah,
we have to be sympathetic. We have to be considerate. We have to be feeling for the family. And if you have bureaucrats, technocrats, devoid of feelings, then we run into serious situations. But how do I avoid this in future? Simple. In law, it can be dealt with, even in parliament, to say, well, in future, whoever dies, if you are accorded a state funeral, this is subject to the family agreeing to whatever is on offer, and the state cannot be given absolute powers over, but it's up to the family to accept the terms and conditions of what this may imply. But it's as simple as that. But in the end, it's the family's voice that matters above
that matters the most. Yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. As we begin to wind up, Bishop, how does Zambia's approach to former presidents compare to other African countries?
What is Zambia's approach to former presidents?
To former presidents. The way we've treated
how they treat. As we're talking, our topic is about. Well, it also depends where you are. There, we can't generalize. Places like Botswana, for example, I have a very good idea about Botswana. And I've just come from a ceremony where the monument and unveiling of the tombstone for the second president of Botswana, Kitumiri Masiri, took place, and his wife. And there was his successor, Festus Mogae. President Mogae was there. There was the one who took over from Mogae, Lieutenant General Ian Khama. General Khama was there. There was the immediate past president, Mokwetsi Masisi. They were all there. And of course, Botswana has had a little turbulence in terms of President Masisi and President Khama in terms of what transpired. But they are there at peace. They've looked after each other, except in this particular incident, the turbulence between Masisi and President Khama. The new president who's come in, Nduma Mboko, has stepped all out to give space and to give empathy, and just to treat his predecessors with the respect due to them. So that's an example, and that's what should be happening. But you see, your question has to do with personalities, because in Zambia, it's the personalities who have come in as presidents and how they've approached the other. And as I mentioned, quoting Martin Luther King, darkness cannot eradicate darkness. Hate cannot, only light can do that. So we need to break that. So we need to have politicians and leaders who have a heart full of love, a heart full of compassion, a heart full of kindness, and who can tap on the talents of their predecessors and say, help me here, my brother. You are in this office. How did you do it? What can I do? So we work together, not like enemies. You come in and say, let me show you what power I have now. You didn't treat me well when I was there in the cold. Now let me show you what I can do to you. That's not a mentality we need. So it's about individuals.
It's about individuals.
A politics of decency, civility, politics of grace, of being there, of integrity, of justice. We need that.
We need it.
Yeah.
Let's move away from this subject and conclude. Before we go away from this, I want to read the Kaunda's the absence of a framework to address these issues has resulted in ongoing economic plunder and instability. It's crucial that we establish mechanisms to break this cycle and ensure a more stable, I believe, environment. Yeah, powerful statement right there.
Absolutely.
You referred to having just come back in the country from Botswana, attending the centennial, I believe, birthday and unveiling of the tomb of your late father-in-law, former president.
That's right.
Yeah, Ketumile Masire. These two questions in one. How much influence did he have on the decisions you've made politically? And why did you decide to stand for the UNIP presidency? Someone said to me, ask him, why didn't he just form his own political party?
Let me start in reverse with that. Why didn't I form my own political? Why did I join UNIP? I believe in unity. I don't believe in fragmenting. And we have too many political parties in Zambia. And a lot of them are saying the same thing, but I guess everybody wants to be president someday. But so I went back to UNIP. I joined UNIP because this is the mother party.
Yes.
This is the party of my parents. This is the party of my uncles. This is a family party. This is the party of all Zambians. This is the party that gave birth to our country.
Yeah.
And of course, all the other parties have broken away from UNIP, so to speak. So, but more profoundly, UNIP exemplifies what a party ought to be. I mean, yes, later on, there are mistakes here and there, but it was a party for all Zambians. It was a movement for all Zambians. It's a party with leaders who are there to serve the Zambian people. And those values are important. And President Kaunda's favorite verse, which Kaweche really quoted, was that thou shalt love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength, and your neighbor as yourself. So UNIP is this party that had leaders who had that spirit, those values. We need those values. UNIP at independence, of course, coming from the colonial context, there were no schools, hospitals. UNIP went about building all these institutions and the university. And there are many things, and empowering the Zambian people through the philosophy of humanism. Humanism places humanity at the center of everything, that people must benefit politically, economically, culturally. So that is why I felt that that was the place for me. And I think it is a party that is encompassing for all. And so that is why UNIP. Then, of course, and then the influence of UNIP, not just as a political party in Zambia, but remember that UNIP also helped our region. It's a Pan-African party.
Yes.
The richness of UNIP's legacy. I mean, UNIP is a party that helped the ANC in South Africa, the South African Communist Party, and other parties in South Africa. UNIP is the party that helped Frelimo in Mozambique. The Lusaka Accord, which brought about Mozambique's independence, chaired in Zambia by President Kaunda. UNIP is the party that helped SWAPO in Namibia. The Namibians were here. UNIP helped ZANU, ZAPU, MPLA. We can go on. And so it's just a legacy. And this is history. This is important. We can't just brush it aside.
No, we can't. That's one of the reasons we're in a mess we're in, because most of the kids, most of the young people don't understand our political history.
They don't understand. And in fact, profoundly, let me just leave with two examples in the context of UNIP, and then go back to my father-in-law, is that UNIP, for example, we all know the slogan, one Zambia, one nation.
One nation.
Now, what people don't understand, that is actually from the UNIP constitution. When it was, the constitution was drawn up, the UNIP constitution, it is stated that the slogan of the party, the motto of the party shall be one Zambia, one nation.
One nation.
So it becomes the nation. And it is about unity, unifying all of us. We are all one. And whether it's about ethnic groups, whether it's about churches, and it's about unity, bringing everybody together. That comes from the UNIP constitution. And in fact, people don't realize that the 24th of October, which is Zambia's independence, was deliberately selected by our founders, because that is the day that UNIP was founded, the 24th of October, 1958. So these are memories. This is important. We mustn't forget
it's
it.
Important.
So this is one of the reasons I want to be with history and steeped in history and build on that history. And the future is ours to create. But let's build on values, and UNIP has those values.
Influence.
Influence, coming back, yes, indeed. As you rightly mentioned, my brother Nathan, I've just come back. My father-in-law was the second president of Botswana, Sekitumi Masire. He was born on the 23rd of July, 1925. So last week, Wednesday, was a centennial of birth.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So he would have been 100 years old. But he was an amazing man. I mean, he was a farmer at heart. I mean, that was his passion and love, farming. And then he was a journalist as well. He did journalism. Then, of course, he became a politician and second president of Botswana. He and Seretse Khama framed and built Botswana. But he was basically the chief architect of Botswana's development, because he was the Minister of Finance and Development Planning, as well as Vice President.
Okay, in Seretse Khama's government, right?
Correct, yes. He was, indeed, from 1966 to 1980. So Seretse Khama died in 1980. So he then was Vice President and Minister of Finance and Development Planning. They structured, they did everything. But he and Seretse, they again, like President Kaunda, President Nyerere, these were servants of the people. They were there to serve the Botswana people, and they laid the structures in place that have made Botswana what it is. Very prudent in the economic management. Botswana was number 3 from the bottom of the impoverished countries in the world. Wow. And of course, now it's a middle income and a success story. Their politics in terms of democracy was an open democratic system. When many countries in Africa were going under one-party state, Botswana remained a multi-party state. So basically, what I learned from him was, first, he was a very shrewd, intelligent man, brilliant man. Very, very humble, and that his greatness was hidden in his humility, and he listened to the people. In Botswana, they have a system they call the kotla, where you listen, you consult, and he was the expert at consulting. So these are things, and of course, his very attribute, his character. He was a man of God. He again, a very devout person. And he brought God's wisdom, he applied God's wisdom, which God had gifted him, to governance and to doing everything for the good of the Botswana people. So yes, I hung around him for over 30 years.
Wow.
And when he died, I was there, and I began to reflect, and I said, wow, where will Botswana find a leader like this man? Where will Africa find leaders like this man? Where will Zambia find leaders? So he's an exemplary example. And yeah, that is, may his soul rest in peace.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. Is UNIP in any alliance?
UNIP at the moment is not in an alliance, but we are working together with all parties. We work together. We're in alliance with the Zambian people.
Okay.
Now,
because I see you attend a lot of these meetings.
Absolutely.
With the other colleagues, the Sequivas, the members,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay.
And it is important. And the alliances, yes, we are working together, and we must work together. In fact, I'm a keen supporter and advocate for going forward in the future of what we may call a government of national unity.
Okay.
It should be in the constitution that whichever party comes into power, it should be one of a government of national unity. But at this juncture in our society in Zambia, all the parties, political parties, need to be working together. We should have a council of party presidents helping and working together and framing the development of Zambia so that we are on the same trajectory and path. Yeah.
Okay.
So no, we work together with all my brothers and sisters in other parties. Yes. And we're the mother party after all. We mustn't forget that. What's
did you hear the question?
Okay, no, you froze for a moment, so
I know. What steps is UNIP taking to strengthen unity across political and generational lines, especially I like the generational lines, because this has basically been an historical conversation.
Very much so. No, in fact, the youth are important. And if you look at the history of UNIP, UNIP was a party of the young. At independence, the likes of the VJ Mwangas, the likes of...
He was like 21 years old, right? VJ was 21.
The Lupia Bandas, the likes of the Sikota Winners, the brothers, the Winner brothers. They were like 32. I think Sikota was 32 in the cabinet. President Kaunda was 39 when he was prime minister, and 40 when he became. So UNIP has always been a party of the youth, and it is important that we draw in the youth because they are the life and the soul and the spirit. And so we are working, yes, closely, but also with the other political parties, we alluded to, and yes, working together with all the other political parties and to work together for the development of our country and to draw on the talents and expertise that we all possess and which we can use for the good of our country. Yes. Yes.
Kaunda, as we end the conversation, if we fail to address this vindictiveness now, the consequences by 2040 could be severe. Let's work towards creating a more cohesive and forward-thinking approach. And another final comment here from Dr. Kaingo. In my opinion, it is necessary to amend the Constitution to include legislation that specifically addresses protocols and procedures for presidential funerals. This would help establish clear guidelines and prevent ongoing misunderstandings or controversies regarding such events. Yeah. Bishop, any final word before we leave?
Any final word, my dear brother, is simply to say that God loves Zambia, that we must never forget that. We started at the beginning. We are a Christian nation. Yes, we are Christians, but we must live the values of God. And because of that, as you asked me earlier, how I ended up from law into the church, and I told you about my mother's prayers and all that, I believe strongly that God loves Zambia. God loves all of us. But if we can just be open to his spirit of love, his spirit of compassion, his spirit of mercy and forgiveness and reconciliation, we'll build a great Zambia, because we'll be walking in the footsteps of our Lord. And what does God require of us? But to walk justly, humbly, and in fellowship with one another. Zambians are great people, and I believe in that, and all shall be well. But I also believe, to conclude, in terms of our leadership, whether it's in the church, whether it is in government, whether it is in industry, whether it is traditional leadership, our leadership must reflect and show forth that sense of love and service to our people. And each leader must live that.
Thank you, Bishop. Ladies and gentlemen, that was our conversation today with Bishop Trevor Mwamba, who took his weekend away from him to sit here with me.
I've enjoyed it immensely, my brother.
Thank you for doing this, Bishop.
God bless you.
I look forward to seeing you when I come to Zambia soon. You told me where you live. I'll swing by. So I'll just...
Absolutely.
I'll swing by, and then we can have some great conversation. We'll see you next time.
Amen. God bless you.
God bless you. Well, everybody, that was our conversation today. I hope you've gleaned something from the historical conversation. My reason for doing this was to help us reflect on things that have happened in the historical political perspective of Zambia, so that it will help us move forward. 12 months to elections. Next week is going to be an incredible show. I have 4 Zambian women working in highly placed corporate America positions and doing some amazing things. We're going to be here talking about how do Zambian professional women contribute to the growth of the nation. Thank you for joining us. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, ZBTR TV, and we're also on Facebook, Zambia Blog Talk Radio. Have a great weekend, everybody, and I'll see you next weekend.
Hello, Zambian diaspora businesses. Do you want to connect with your community back home, right on ZBTR TV? I'm here from Forge AI Studios, Tilfeus, where we're crafting faith-fused media with AI magic. From AI music video production to powerful AI image creation and even music composition. We've got everything you need to make your advertising truly resonate on ZBTR TV. If you're ready to make an impact, let's create something extraordinary together. Your vision, AI powered. Connect with Forge AI Studios today.
Zambia Blog Talk Radio.